Okay, okay. What it do, what it say. Got a message to convey with no delay. The thought for today is putting out work, being consistent. Consistency in your work, consistency in your content, consistency as a brand. Now, the topic at hand, I would have to say that a little preview for today would be looking at what kind of content you're going to be putting out, looking at what content really is, looking at how that applies to the law of attraction, looking at how you want to hook your audience with content, what kind of content you should focus on, really how to make your content better, kind of the purpose of it all, tying it all together. So I would have to say I've been making different types of content for something like 10 years now. I would have to say that the first type of content that I started making was books. Obviously, I'm doing videos and books now, along with a few other things. Every different type of content really has a lot in common. Putting out content is, really a big part of building a brand, big part of just creating stuff. Creating a product. So I learned a lot from doing this over the years. Few things that are really important, few things that are going to help just a little bit, but at the end of the day, it all goes together in the mix. So, looking at everything again, content is really anything that you create. Whether you're a painter, a musician, an author, anything really, even if what you're doing doesn't really classify under too much of creating something, you can still find a way to document what you're doing and create that into content. So really, even if you don't consider yourself a creative person, someone that creates stuff, you can find a way to create content that will help build your brand, whatever that might be. I'm gonna look at how to do that. Gonna look at some of the stuff I learned throughout the years about content. Gonna look at what audiences are considering when they're viewing content, kind of how content works. Basically, how consistency revolves around that. So, to get started, I would have to say the first point I would like to make, one of the central, the backbone to everything I'm going to be putting out today, topic, is that consistent content is the best content. A problem I had when I started putting out my first pieces of content, and the problem I see with a lot of other people is, perfectionist type mindset, like you can't put it out until it's perfect. Well, that's really the wrong kind of mindset to be having. I mean, you just want to create something. Don't worry too much about, making it perfect after it's done. Just create something. Get in the habit of creating stuff, and get in the habit of putting stuff out that you don't think is 100% perfect. That's going to help a lot with consistency. It's much more important to be consistent than to be perfect. Consistency is very important, mainly because the audience is going to be much more noticing of stuff you put out when you're consistent. People, form unconscious patterns based upon what they do, and if you are releasing something consistently, preferably, same time, same day, multiple times a week, people will get in the habit of, tuning into what you got to say at that certain time on that certain day. And, once people get that habit more and more, they're going to tell their friends about it, and it's just going to exponential growth from there. So that's what you want. You want people that are tuned in. You want an audience that's consistently listening to you. If you kind of just drop off the face of the earth for a while and then come back, it makes it much more difficult to get momentum. And of course, this is even more important at the beginning when you don't really have an audience yet. You're still building an audience. Once you get a bigger audience, you can relax on this a little bit if you want, but the more you are consistent, the higher of a retention rate you're going to get from your audience, and bigger audience you get altogether, really. So looking at what is content really, I mean, content is anything that you create. Content is basically like a commercial. Content is basically like some way to provide value to your audience, to your customers. So this all obviously ties back to like a law of attraction type business type venture, where you're putting something out that is hopefully providing value. You're not trying to just like get people's attention and show them your product like old school marketing tactics. You're really trying to create as much value as you can for your audience, even more so than your competitors. So don't be focusing on like, what are my competitors doing? Focus on how much value are my competitors giving away for free, and then try to beat that. So really, content is anything that you create, whether it's a song, a painting, a book, YouTube video, a podcast, anything really. There's so many different types of ways that you can create content, and even though not all of them create income, they can you can find ways to generate income over time once you build the audience. That's the key thing, is building the audience, because once you build an audience, something obviously that you understand, that you can educate people on, that people want to know about. You start doing that, you're creating value for other people. The value will be returned to you, most likely. So goes back to everything else too, about like not focusing on the money, stuff like that. It's more focusing on the value you're creating. So the law of attraction would say focus on what you want to create more than the result that you're getting. So with the content, focus on creating value more than like how many likes you get, how much money it makes, stuff like that. And this ties into really like the next point, which is when you're creating content, over time you'll start to get a better understanding of what kind of content is going to resonate the best with your audience, what kind of content is going to create the better outcome, create more value, that kind of stuff. But especially in the beginning, I think what's gonna happen in most cases is you might create something that you think is people are gonna love this, and people are gonna really resonate with whatever piece of content it is, and then you release it, and then you find out that there's really not much traction with that piece of content. People aren't really picking up on it. People aren't really tuning into it. It's not really resonating with your audience. In the meantime, you might just create something that felt like didn't really put much effort into it compared to other stuff, and then that one really like takes off with your audience. So basically, you want to keep creating content, and you never really know what's gonna work and what's not. You just kind of have to just keep creating stuff, putting stuff out, and then over time, you get a better idea of that. And even once you get really good, you just got to keep trying different things, because you never know what's gonna be the next thing that people pick up on, the next trend, stuff like that. Just kind of like pay attention to that. So most of the content that you're creating should really be focused on your core audience. The topic, what your brand is. Say you're teaching people how to cook. Most of your audience is probably going to be videos or books that are teaching people recipes, teaching people the cooking process. But every once in a while, put something out that just is off topic. Put something out that kind of conveys like a little bit of your personality in a way that doesn't have anything to do with what your topic is, you know, what your subject is, that kind of thing. Uh, a lot of people do kind of like a video or a podcast of day in the life. Like, this is what I did today when I wasn't working on what I'm usually working on. And this is a good thing to do. And like I said, when you can't really think of something to really do for that day, or kind of feel like you've been doing the similar thing over and over, kind of break the trend. A lot of different reasons that you might want to think about doing something like that. Another good reason to do that is it helps convey your personality, which is the next point I'm getting to, is really your content. You want to convey your own personality. I see a lot of people make the mistake of trying to make something that's similar to whatever is the most popular at the moment. And you know, there's certain elements of that can work, you know, finding what's really popular and trying to capitalize off of that. But at the same time, you really want to make sure that it's original. You really want to make sure that your personality is conveyed in whatever it is you're doing that is different from everybody else, because your audience is going to pick up on that. And you're not really going to be building a brand if people see you as the person that's sounds like or looks like or tries to be like that other person that's really popular. So you don't want to get that kind of reputation. That's a really bad tag or reputation, whatever you want to call it, that you would not want attached to your brand. So it's important to avoid that. And I think really looking into what I've seen, as far as like, I've seen a lot of people start creating content, have be really motivated, have a lot of hopes that they're gonna be successful with the content they're creating. And I think the number one problem I see with a lot of people why it doesn't work out is they just quit too early. They quit before they really start to see solid results. They quit before they really start to build an audience and get a lot of traction. It can be really discouraging putting out a ton of content and not getting many views, or really anyone even noticing what you're doing. And you really get to a point where you're like, why am I doing this? What's the point? Stuff like that. Well, with anything I've really seen, I've seen people who have gotten lucky and the first or second thing they put out is really stuck, and they've been able to start building an audience from the start. But in most cases, what I've seen is, people have to put out like at least 10 different pieces of content before one of them really gets noticed by someone. And then what happens from there is people tend to go looking back through their catalog after they find the one thing. So it really helps to just keep plugging away and just keep releasing content, and have maybe like even like 100 different pieces of content out there before you really can expect to get start to get an audience. And just a good thing to remember with business and with growth in general, with learning something new, with starting a new skill, with putting out content, is kind of like a graph of momentum or growth, to where at the beginning, it's going to seem really like you're barely even creating any growth. You're just kind of like putting stuff out and nothing's really happening. But after a while of doing this, you'll start to see a little bit of growth, and then you'll just get some like massive spike of growth when you keep plugging away. And that massive spike of growth is just going to go exponentially up and up and up. And as long as you stay consistent with your content, once you have like 100 followers, that's going to turn into 1,000, and then 1,000 into 10,000, 10,000 into 100,000, and 100,000, 100,000, million. That's what you want to focus on, is just being consistent with your content, putting stuff out. People will pick up on it over time, and get in like a cycle of creation and then promotion. So majority of the process is creating content, but then once that content is created, obviously unless you've got some kind of promoter that you're paying or taking a cut, or some kind of manager that's going to be taking care of this stuff for you. You definitely want to do some research and find out what are all the different, pipelines or different ways to promote content in your specific category. You want to find out everywhere you can really put your content out. So this is another skill you really got to learn. That goes with creating content, is promoting content. Make sure that you properly promote the stuff. If you're doing it right, you shouldn't be putting more time into promotion than you're putting into creating it. It's just going to be more difficult at first when you're learning this stuff, but after you get the process of promoting your content down, you don't really have to think about it too much. You can just create it and then promote it on all the channels that you're used to promoting it. Keep your eyes open for a new channel to pop up that you can promote through. There's kind of like a rule. Find the most profitable, the most audience building channels that you can find, and put most of your effort into the channels that provide the biggest audience, stuff like that. And leading into the next point really is that if you want to know how well your content is doing, just look to your audience. Don't get mad at your audience for saying they don't like your stuff like that. Just take it as criticism that you can learn from. Your audience is always going to hold you accountable for what you're doing. If you're not being really real, if you're not providing value, if it seems like you're more taking value, your audience is going to pick up on this. Just like if you're doing stuff right, your audience is going to be letting you know, and they're going to let you know what they like, what they don't like. It's important to have kind of a thick skin so that when you do get criticism, because it's going to happen, especially when you're starting out. Nobody starts out as an expert, so when you're a beginner, people are more likely to criticize you, and it's kind of strange that you'll get a lot of criticism when you start putting out content. Then as you start to get better and put out more consistent content that's higher quality, you'll get a lot less criticism. And then as you start to build a much bigger audience, you'll start to get more criticism again. So it's kind of something that you just have to be used to, because if you can't handle the criticism that you get at the beginning, then you might as well give up right then, because you're definitely not going to be able to handle the criticism you get once you reach the level that you're trying to reach. Just be original. So important. One of the biggest things, being original. Can't say that enough. Don't worry about what other people are doing. Just focus on what you're trying to create. Just focus on what you want to see. Don't focus on what other people have that you don't. These are all important concepts with the law of attraction that can apply to anything really. So I'm just breaking it down for building a brand through content, building an audience through content. Content is super important, and it's only going to be, in my opinion, more and more important in whatever you're doing as business progresses, as technology progresses, as people progress in the terms of the kind of content that they consume and the way that they consume content. Look at just simple things like radio. People barely listen to radio anymore. People don't watch TV as much as they used to now that the internet's around. Even the internet, the way people consume on there, videos are becoming more and more popular. So yeah, just things to keep a watch on, things to keep in mind when you're doing stuff, when you're creating stuff, when you're building your brand. And I would have to leave it at that for the day. I would have to sign off and say that if you like what you heard, go ahead and hit the like button. If you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe. Check out the rest of the channel. Leave any comments or questions. And that's about it for the day. I'm out.